We are in Genesis chapter 22, and I'd like to go through 24 if we get that far. And we've been doing just 2 chapters at a time, but I'd really like to add chapter 24 if we can get that far. So God has taken his good old time about fulfilling the progeny portion of his covenant with Abraham. Remember what progeny means?
Bearing children.
So the promise that Abraham's descendants would number more than the stars of the sky and the sands of the seashore. But,
With no kids.
and he's getting old, right? And he finally had Isaac, right? And he had Ishmael, but Ishmael was sent away. So he has just Isaac. At this point in our story, Abraham is 100 years old and Sarah 90, and they were childless. But lo and behold, Sarah became pregnant and gave birth to a son, Isaac, through whom the plan of redemption would be fulfilled. With the introduction of Sarah's son into the family, tensions rose to a fever pitch between Abraham and Sarah, Hagar, and her son Ishmael. Finally, at Sarah's insistence, Abraham cast out Hagar and Ishmael, abandoning them to an uncertain fate. They did fine for themselves because God went and took care of them. Remember, he went and talked with them. Genesis 22, verse 1. Sometime later, God tested Abraham. He said to him, "Abraham." "Here I am," he replied. Now, wait a minute. Why would God test Abraham? What is it?
Abraham needs testing.
He needs tested? What do you mean?
I don't know, just the way he's been doing things.
He's working on his own plan for things along with his wife.
Yeah.
Yeah, and remember, we're only hearing bits of this story over a life of 100+ years.
And he did pull the sister thing.
If someone took your life, Judy, and said, okay, well, this is what Judy's life was about. There was this thing, and then there was this thing.
I'd edit.
You know what I mean? It's like we have long lives, right? And if someone were to tell our story and they just picked out little excerpts of it, would it be the excerpts you would want them to take out?
Probably not take out excerpts and I would sound like a horrific person. And you could take out excerpts that say I sound like an angel.
Right.
Depends on who did it.
That's right. So we
And
need to.
nobody is seeing no one person is seeing your whole entire life usually.
Everything
God
put
does.
together. So has Abraham done anything good? What have we seen that he's done that's shown goodness?
Well, he rescued Lot.
He did. He brought Lot with him. He came with some family when he came down, and then he got
Set
the
him up.
promise.
He obeyed God
He obeyed God.
for the most part.
Yeah, he's kind of stupid. Like, don't go to Egypt and then lie about your wife. Duh. And he did it twice, right? So the thing is that
Didn't learn anything from the first time.
yeah, but that doesn't make those episodes that we read about that he failed in. That doesn't depict his whole life. If someone took something that you did that wasn't the best thing, and they said, well, Merlin is all about this. This is who Merlin is, and that's the only part of the life. That wouldn't be fair, would it? Because there would be other things that depict your nobility, your goodness. What about with Abraham, his willingness to obey God?
Most of the
go-
time he did, he was very fortunate and rich.
He didn't always ask before he did stuff, right?
Yeah.
But he did obey God. He did go where God told him to go. And was he respected or renowned in his community?
Yeah.
Seemed to be.
Yeah.
When he needed to call an army, he had 318 men who were trained, that he had trained for that kind of work. So he has quite a crew that's going with him. Do you like the way he talked to that guy, Abimelech? No, I didn't like that. I didn't like the way he dealt with Abimelech. That didn't seem upfront. That seemed kind of sneaky. But that's the thing with Abraham. He has his flaws and his good things too. Look at verse 2. Then God said, "Take your son, your only son, whom you love, Isaac, and go to the region of Moriah. Sacrifice him there as a burnt offering on a mountain I will show you." If I got a message from God like that, I would think it was not from God. I don't know that I would obey that.
It doesn't sound like something God would have us do.
Right. And that's not something I would think, Laura, you're hearing things. You're hearing from the devil. That's not something God would do. The Lord put his servants' faith and loyalty to a supreme test, thereby instructing Abraham, Isaac, and their descendants as to the kind of total consecration that the Lord's covenant requires. In other words, this is being recorded. Abraham's the one who's following after God. He's learning about God, and God puts him to a supreme test. This test foreshadows the consecration and sacrifice of another offspring of Abraham that would happen. What is this predestined, or what is this?
Christ.
Did not God allow Christ to be crucified on the cross and actually die? So let's see where this goes. What's the context for this scene? What leads up to it? In Genesis 21, Isaac was born. Hagar and Ishmael were exiled. Abraham made a covenant with Abimelech, and Abraham, Sarah, and Isaac were living in Beersheba. Nothing that happened previously suggests anything leading up to or foreshadowing this. Where are the two speakers, God and Abraham? Presumably, God is not physically present with Abraham, sharing a meal as he did under the great tree of Mamre. Remember when he was told to go to Sodom? God showed up in person. Rather, he just speaks out of the blue, as it were. And where is Abraham? Is he at Beersheba? Is he indoors? Is he outdoors? We're not told. When God calls Abraham, he says abruptly, "Abraham," without any opening gesture or introductory words. You think that got his attention? And Abraham answers just as abruptly, "Here I am." In Hebrew, that's a single word. It's heneh, something like present or behold. Abraham does not prostrate himself before God, as he did when those three men visited him at Mamre, nor does he extend a greeting. God's call and Abraham's response are so abrupt as to be shocking. We don't even know if the exchange is audible. Was it something that he heard within his head and answered in his head? We don't even know that. What's the reason for God tempting Abraham so outrageously, so terribly? It's God's demand in response to something Abraham did? Or is it motivated by other external or internal compulsions, either on Abraham's part or God's? Those are the questions we ask as we go forward. He just hears the voice. God says, "Go sacrifice him there as a burnt offering on the mountain I will show you." That's it. Going on to verse 3. Early the next morning, Abraham got up and loaded his donkey. He took with him 2 of his servants and his son Isaac. When he had cut enough wood for the burnt offering, he set out for the place God had told him about. This is shocking. Abraham and Sarah had longed for a child promised by God, who would fulfill the covenant. Abraham had expelled Hagar and his firstborn son Ishmael to protect Isaac. And now God wants Abraham to kill Isaac by offering him up as a burnt offering. And Abraham agrees to do it. We know nothing about how he comes to the decision during this night that passes. Do you think he was sleeping? I bet it was a restless night.
And you wonder about Sarah and how it affected her, after being.
Was he
90
even going to
years
tell
old.
Sarah?
Yeah.
Was he even going to tell Sarah? I don't know if he would. Why would God command him to do this would be the question he'd be asking. Isn't that what you would be asking?
Yeah.
Why is
I
God?
was crazy.
I would think I heard things. But of course, Abraham has heard God's voice before, right? So he probably knows this actually was God. He doesn't seem to have any doubt. For me, I haven't heard God, well, I think one time I did, but I haven't heard God audibly speak to me. I don't know if that has ever happened, but Abraham's had it happen a couple of times, right? So I would imagine for him, this is not like it would even be for us, because I haven't heard that kind of conversation with God. Mm-hmm.
I'm thinking, you know how you if I wanted to call you up and say, and ask you for a favor, or I want you to just do something for me, and so you answer the phone and I say, Laura, how are you today? I get rid of the, I wanna know, I wanna be pleasant about this.
Right.
But God didn't do that.
No, he did not.
He said, Laura, go.
Yes. And
Start your house
do.
on fire right now.
it was
Yeah.
one word, it was a one word Abraham, and it was a one word response from Abraham. Yes, I'm here. Yep, this is interesting. As readers, we know that God makes a covenant with Abraham in Genesis 12, in which he says, I will make of you a great nation, and I will bless you. I will make your name great so that you will be a blessing. I will bless those who bless you and curse those who curse you. All the families of the earth will find blessing in you. We also know that the blessing will be transmitted through Isaac, not Ishmael. For when Sarah demands that Hagar and Ishmael be sent away, God says, obey Sarah, no matter what she asks of you, for it is through Isaac that descendants will bear your name. Abraham's lived through all that. Now he has God telling him to go sacrifice Isaac, the only son he has. Abraham had to have been shocked. And he had to wonder what God's motive was. What's going on here? Between verses 2 and 3, an entire night passes. And by the morning, Abraham is determined to obey God's command. As readers, we're left to puzzle over Abraham's thoughts. The scripture doesn't tell us what he was thinking. During that night, imagine the depth of pain and struggle that he must have had. How does he follow this command of God? Was this even God? He seems to know it was God. Of course, he's heard God's voice before and talked with God even in person. So he seems to know that, whereas I think we would be going, oh, maybe I just had some, bad sausage last night, or some indigestion and I had a bad dream. But Abraham's heard God's voice before. He's spoken with him.
He must have been really, I would think, clinging to that promise that through Isaac the descendants would bear your name. I mean, what else did he have to hold on to?
I know. Genesis 22, verse 4. On the third day, Abraham looked up and saw the place in the distance. So what did they talk about on their way? 3 days it took to get to the place. 3 days. Isaac is going along with them. They're carrying the wood and the stuff for the sacrifice.
Isaac's asking what's gonna be the sacrifice.
He said to his servants, stay here with the donkey while I and the boy go over there. We will worship and then we will come back to you. Abraham took the wood for the burnt offering and placed it on his son Isaac, and he himself carried the fire and the knife. 65 miles. This was a 3-day journey. Do they talk?
I'm sure
Is
they probably
Abraham
will.
alone in front, like leading the way, and no one else even knows where they're going? And so we don't have any record of him saying anything. Just, let's go, we're going here. Notice though, he says something interesting there. He says, we will worship and then
We-
Come back.
we
We will come back.
We,
It's like he knew
or hoped.
or hoped.
Here's the 65 miles. They were in Beersheba, and he was going up to Mount Moriah. Now, where's Mount Moriah? Do you see the city name
In
there?
Jerusalem.
Mount Moriah is a part of the mountain range on which Jerusalem is built. Yes.
Where he said, we will come back. Now, if he would said, we're gonna worship and then I will come back, maybe his servants would have done everything to stop him too.
I don't know.
I mean, what?
I know.
You know, they would have been alerted to something wrong.
Maybe.
you know.
Maybe. Mount Moriah is part of the mountain range in which Jerusalem is built. There is a portion of bedrock exposed, and that is where Solomon builds the temple much later in time. The Holy of Holies is said to have been on that exposed bedrock. So this place where God is sending Abraham to sacrifice Isaac is a place that has a future history that's going to happen right in that same spot. Here's the Temple Mount. You can see it's across from the Mount of Olives. You can, down the hill is the Kidron Valley, and then the eastern wall of the temple, retaining wall. And on the platform itself is Mount Moriah and the Dome of the Rock. That is where Abraham was going to sacrifice Isaac. That bedrock is where Solomon built the temple and where the Holy of Holies sat. In Islam, it is where Muhammad ascended into heaven. Just to the left, you see the Church of the Holy Sepulchre, and that's thought to be the place that Jesus was buried after crucifixion. Of course, he didn't stay there long. But that's the history of that area. So isn't it interesting that at this time in history, God is sending Abraham with the child to this specific place, a 3-day walk to get to this specific place. Interesting, huh? Do you mean to tell me that God told Abraham to sacrifice Isaac where Solomon later will build the temple, where the Dome of the Rock stands today, and right near where Jesus was crucified? Holy cow. Wow. Verse 7, as the two of them went on together, Isaac spoke up and said to his father Abraham, Father? Yes, my son, Abraham replied. The fire and the wood are here, Isaac said, but where is the lamb for the burnt offering? Do you think he has any idea he's the sacrifice? I don't think he has any clue. Abraham answered, God himself will provide the lamb for the burnt offering, my son. And the two of them went on together. So if you read verse 8, with the comma or without the comma, it has two different meanings. Abraham said, God himself will provide the lamb for the burnt offering, my son. Or, God himself will provide the lamb for the burnt offering, my son. What do you think? Which way do you think he said it? You think so? In other words, is the son going to be the offering? Or is he telling his son that God will provide the offering? As Abraham and Isaac trudge together toward the mountain, we have an open gap until Isaac asks, here are the fire and the wood, but where is the lamb for the burnt offering? At this, Abraham's composure cracks. He replies, God will provide the lamb for the burnt offering, my son. In a dazzling moment of grammatical ambiguity, our narrator strikes a near fatal blow at Abraham's resolve. When we are unable to tell if grammatically my son is in a positive or a vocative, that is, will God provide an offering other than Isaac, or will he provide my son? Isaac is with Abraham on the journey, but like the journey itself, we know virtually nothing about him. What do we know about Isaac? When was the last thing we saw him? When he was 2 to 3 years old, right? When what's the other guy's name? Ishmael got sent away with Hagar.
Arguing, probably fighting.
We last saw Isaac when he was weaned, and now we see him again here. We have nothing in between but a gap. Later we learn that Sarah dies at 127 years old. That's later in chapter 23. Since Isaac was born when Sarah was 90, he is 37 when his mother dies. Perhaps placing him during the journey this journey in his early 30s, for he could not have carried the load of wood if he were a mere child. And notice that aside from asking where the lamb is, Isaac has nothing to say. He allows himself to be bound and offered for sacrifice. He is a willing, silent victim. Now, why would he do that? Because it is not uncommon in the land of that time. They were offering child sacrifices, people sacrifices in the other cultures and religions of that time in that area. I
thought
know.
they called him a boy though, I figured.
He's
he
probably
was-
30 years old.
He's old enough to fight
Yeah,
back.
if you're 90, he's a boy.
I know my dad, I was always gonna be his baby.
Yeah,
Remember, Abraham said, "We will worship and then we will come back to you." If Abraham is going to sacrifice the 30-something Isaac, that's within the, how is that, "we will come back to you"? Does Abraham know?
I don't know if he knows or not.
I don't think that boy was 37 years old at that
30 years old. 37 when his mom died. She was 127. They do by her age. You can say when he was born, and she died at 127. So, wow.
He'd have fought back.
Yeah, you would think. When they reached the place God had told him about, Abraham built an altar there and arranged the wood on it. He bound his son Isaac and laid him on the altar on top of the wood. Then he reached out his hand and took the knife to slay his son. But the angel of the Lord called out to him from heaven, "Abraham, Abraham." "Phew, here I am." Don't you think he was glad to hear some voice from heaven? He replied, "Do not lay a hand on the boy," he said. "Do not do anything to him. Now I know that you fear God, because you have not withheld from me your son, your only son." Now, what do we know about Isaac? Almost nothing, right? You mentioned when he was a little over 2, when he was weaned, right? And then the older brother was picking on him, right? What's happened from then to now? What we see is his father says, "Come," he comes. He asks the question, "Are we going, where's the sacrifice?" But he doesn't pursue that. He seems to be kind of go with the flow. We're going to see some things in his later life that might also help us to understand the kind of person that he was. He seems quite introverted.
But too, isn't Abraham being a good father and bringing him up with faith?
And
I've
he
always said that, what tremendous amount of faith that both Isaac and Abraham had in that particular, I don't think we understand that kind of faith.
And we're not in that time. That seems horrid to me. But if they were doing sacrifices around in that area at that time, you could see where, in fact, some scholars believe that was the reason for this story. The reason that God had this happen was because Isaac does not get sacrificed. And that's the point, that in God you're not doing human sacrifice. So that some scholars believe that's why this story is here, to make the point that the Jewish people, the Israelite people, the people descended from Abraham and Isaac and that people, that they are not going to be participating in human sacrifice or child sacrifice. So some say that's the whole reason for this story, the reason that God did this and did this symbolism for the people. I don't know. Let's
But
see.
it's also an example of obedience to go along with that.
And it's awfully linked to Christ being willing to be sacrificed for the forgiveness of our sins. He went willingly, correct? Did Christ fight? Did he try to wiggle out of it? Isaac seems to have gone willingly.
He asked that God take this cup away from him.
Abraham looked up, and there in a thicket he saw a ram caught by its horns. He went over and took the ram and sacrificed it as a burnt offering instead of his son. So Abraham called that place, "The Lord will provide," and to this day it is said, "On the mountain of the Lord will be provided." Some scholars say that human sacrifice was common in that time, and that this is God's way of saying no more. The blowing of the ram's horn announces a new beginning, a new relationship with God. God provides the law to describe the sacrifices that are to be made, when and how. And they are not made with humans or children. They're not made with that way. So God is going to be different than the people groups of this area. And so many believe that is the reason that God did this with Abraham and with Isaac, to make the point, you're going to be different. This is going to be different, not the same as these people groups around here.
So what was the name of the, it called it the mountain of the Lord will provide, but
Moriah, Mount
It
Moriah.
was Moriah?
Yeah, go ahead, what were you gonna say?
I was thinking that perhaps the reason, Isaac didn't question is because he was the apple of his father's eye. They must have had a loving, close relationship for him to be able to go without question and do what his father wanted him to do. I think he just loved and trusted his father so much that he didn't question it.
I could really see that all the way up to getting tied up and put on the altar. That would be, as a, for me, that would be, wait a minute, Dad, what's going on here?
But
Especially if
he
he's
was
30 years
probably
old.
If he was in his 30s and his father was well over 100 years old or whatever, he was probably very strong and he could have fought, and he obviously didn't because he allowed it to happen.
And many say that's the link to Christ, that, Christ allowed this to happen. He had the power and the ability to get off of that cross, and he did not. Mhm. Yeah, I don't know, Isaac's a little odd. I was gonna say queer, but we have a different definition for queer these days, but just odd. Like, he's different, he's really different. We're gonna see that as we go further. So, God provides the law to describe the sacrifices that are going to be made. That's when God provides the law for them on making sacrifices. It's not going to be children. When Abraham says to his servants, we will worship and then we will come back to you, the epistle to the Hebrews picks up on it and understands in light of the Christian experience. So this is in Hebrews 11, verse 17. By faith, Abraham when put to the test, offered up Isaac. And he who had received the promises was ready to offer his only son, of whom it was said, through Isaac descendants shall bear your name. He reasoned that God was able to raise even from the dead, and he received Isaac back as a symbol. So that's what the New Testament writers believed. What do you think? That from Abraham's perspective, God could even raise Isaac from the dead.
He would have had to, really, if he said he was gonna continue through Isaac.
Right. From this perspective, we can see immediate parallels in the binding of Isaac. In other words, since he wasn't actually sacrificed, they call this story the binding of Isaac. So that Jesus in the Gospels, Abraham offers his only son as a sacrifice. God offers his only son as a sacrifice. Isaac is to be sacrificed in the region of Moriah. Christ is sacrificed in the region of Moriah. Isaac carries the wood of the fire for his own sacrifice. Christ carries the wood of the cross for his own sacrifice. Abraham is told God will provide the lamb for the sacrificial offering. God provides Christ, the Lamb of God, for the sacrificial offering. And Isaac is about 33 years old when Abraham offers him as a sacrifice. Christ is about 33 years old when God offers him as a sacrifice. I still think this is a weird story.
Hard to make sense of it.
Chapter 22, verse 15. The angel of the Lord called to Abraham from heaven a second time and said, I swear by myself, declares the Lord, that because you have done this and have not withheld your son, your only son, I will surely bless you and make your descendants as numerous as the stars in the sky, and as the sand on the seashore. Your descendants will take possession of the cities of their enemies, and through your offspring all nations on earth will be blessed because you have obeyed me. Then Abraham returned to his servants, and they set off together for Beersheba. And Abraham stayed in Beersheba. Okay, now, notice here, the Lord says, I swear by myself. Well, God can't swear to God. He is God. Right? What would be anything greater than swearing by yourself when you are God, right? It's kind of a funny way to say that. He's still saying that he's going to have all these descendants. He's only got the one son. Where are these descendants coming from? And we're not really sure how Isaac feels about all this, but we're going to see a hint to how Isaac felt about it a little bit later. Notice that in verse 19, Abraham returned to his servants, and they set off together for Beersheba. And then this part, and Abraham stayed in Beersheba. Isaac does not stay in Beersheba. Can you blame him? He goes to a different area. He moves out. He moves a little bit away from his father. Verse 20. Sometime later, Abraham was told, Milcah is also a mother. She has borne sons to your brother Nahor. Do you remember Milcah? Me neither. Here's the chart. Look at the chart. Remember when we saw this chart? Terah was the father of Sarah, Abraham, Nahor, and Haran. Remember? Abraham marries his sister Sarai, and they have the son Isaac. Remember that Nahor was another son of Terah, and he had Milcah. And so that's who we're talking about here, Milcah. So it's do you call that a distant relative or a close relative?
Maybe a cousin.
That'd be a cousin.
You figure, what are you asking?
I said, are they brother and sister?
Yeah,
They were-
yeah.
Yeah, they were brother and sister.
Yeah, they are. Sarah was Abraham's half-sister, fathered by Terah with a different mother. Okay, is that the way God wanted it to be? No, that's not the way he set it up to be, but that is the way it is. So it says here, sometime later, Abraham was told, Milcah is also a mother. She has borne sons to your brother Nahor. So the family is, his family is growing. Uz, the firstborn, Buzz, his brother. Now, would you ever do that?
Buzz.
Uz and Buzz.
Sounds a little redneck.
Well, then there's
Where
Kemuel,
rednecks come
the
from.
father of Aram, Kesed, Hazel, Pildash, Jedilath, and Bethuel. Bethuel became the father of Rebekah. Milcah bore those 8 sons to Abraham's brother Nahor. His concubine, whose name was Reumah, also had sons, Teba, Gema, Tehash, and Makah. Now, why do we care? Because what happens next is that Abraham sends for a wife for
That's
Isaac.
Rebecca.
And where's Rebecca in this?
Bethuel's
See, she's related. She's
father.
related to this family here. She's the child of Milcah there. So he sends, Abraham sends a servant to go get a wife for his son that is a part of their original family. Why would he do that? Why doesn't he have her marry somebody that's nearby?
Because he wants the faith to stay intact.
Right. Not marrying foreigners or other people outside of the family. He wants to go back to the original family, hoping that will keep pure the religion and the belief practices. So Genesis 23, verse 1. Sarah lived to be 127 years old. Woo! She died at Kiriath Arba, that is Hebron, in the land of Canaan, and Abram went to mourn for Sarah and to weep over her. Then Abraham rose from beside his dead wife and spoke to the Hittites. He said, I am a foreigner and stranger among you. Sell me some property for burial site here so I can bury my dead. The Hittites replied to Abraham, Sir, listen to us. You are a mighty prince among us. Bury your dead in the choicest of our tombs. None of us will refuse you his tomb for burying your dead. What else? What else is not written here?
Why was Sarah living away from Abraham?
Good question. And why were these people so eager to provide a tomb, these foreigners? Because Abraham was rich. He had lots of money. And they were happy to sell him some tomb space, the prime space they could find for his beloved wife. Then Abraham rose and bowed down before the people of the land, the Hittites. He said to them, If you are willing to let me bury my dead, then listen to me and intercede with Ephron, son of Zohar, on my behalf, so he will sell me the cave of Machpelah, which belongs to him and is at the end of his field. Ask him to sell it to me for the full price as a burial site among you. Ephron the Hittite was sitting among his people, and he replied to Abraham in the hearing of all the Hittites who had come to the gate of his city. No, my lord, he said, listen to me. I give you the field, and I'll give you the cave that is in it. I give it to you in the presence of my people. Bury your dead. "Oh, no, I couldn't possibly charge you for it." Again, Abraham bowed down before the people of the land, and he said to Ephron in their hearing, "Listen to me. If you will, I will pay the price of the field. Accept it from me so I can bury my dead there." Ephron answered Abraham, "Listen to me, my lord. The land is worth 400 shekels of silver. But what is that between you and me? Just bury your dead." Is he really giving it to him free?
No.
Just for 400 shekels, that's what it's worth. Abraham agreed to Ephron's terms and weighed out for him the price he had named in the hearing of the Hittites, 400 shekels of silver according to the weight current among the merchants. So despite Ephron's pretense of generosity, 400 shekels of silver was an exorbitant price for a field. Ephron was taking advantage of Abraham during a time of great grief and bereavement. He knew that Abraham had to deal quickly in order to have a place to bury Sarah, so he insisted that Abraham buy the entire lot.
But he can say, "Oh, but I offered it to you for nothing."
And of course, all the people are there to witness it at the gate. The people at the gate are all there to see this transaction go on. So Ephron's field in Machpelah near Mamre, both the field and the cave in it, and all the trees within the borders of the field, was deeded to Abraham as his property in the presence of all the Hittites who had come to the gate of the city. Afterward, Abraham buried his wife Sarah in the cave in the field of Machpelah near Mamre, which is at Hebron in the land of Canaan. So the field and the cave in it were deeded to Abraham by the Hittites as a burial site. Now, what do we know about the land of Canaan in regards to Abraham? That was the land that God said he was to own. And now he is deeded property in Canaan. The field and the cave were deeded to him. So did Sarah know anything about the binding incident with Isaac?
Don't know.
Probably not.
Doesn't say.
Between the incident with Isaac and Sarah's death was a short time. But there were servants who went with Abraham and Isaac. You would think it would be hard for her to not notice that they were gone, but perhaps she was in declining health or not attentive because of her age, and she was nearing the end of her time. In other words, was she really understanding what was going on around her? We simply don't know. There's nothing said about her in the story when he takes Isaac to sacrifice him. There's nothing said about Sarah. But she did live to be 127. That's pretty good compared to me anyway. This is the cave of the patriarchs, Hebron in Israel. It doesn't look like much of a cave, does it?
Looks like a
Not
castle.
really.
Yeah, so later they built on top of it and made it into this place. Abraham, Isaac, Rebekah, Sarah, the patriarchs were buried here. At least that's the story, that this is where the patriarchs were buried. It doesn't look much like a cave though. So the covenant promise of redemption will pass through Isaac, but at 40 years old, Isaac has no wife and no child. Indeed, he lives apart from Abraham in the Negev. We're going to see that here. In other words, he gets home and then he moves out from his dad to his own place in the desert. He's near Ber Lahai Roi, apparently alone in his dead mother's tent. It appears that he's living in what was his mother's tent. After the binding, however, we see plenty of both Abraham and Isaac, but Isaac never utters a word to his father, nor does his father speak to him. Kind of ironic that Isaac's name means laughter. Abraham must act if the covenant is to be fulfilled. So what does he do? Abraham was now very old, and the Lord had blessed him in every way. He said to the senior servant in his household, the one in charge of all the land, "Put your hand under my thigh. I want you to swear by the Lord, the God of heaven and the God of earth, that you will not get a wife for my son from the daughters of the Canaanites, among whom I am living, but will go to my country and my own relatives and get a wife for my son Isaac." We're told later that Abraham was 175 years old when he dies. Isaac was in his early 30s at the binding sacrifice. That didn't happen. Isaac is 75 years old when Abraham dies. So how old was Isaac when his father sent him sent the servant to find a wife for him? He was probably about 40 years old.
Well,
So-
if you can't find your own wife at 40.
Abraham enlists his senior household servant, Eliezer of Damascus, to find a wife for Isaac among Abraham's own people, those who continued living in Haran after Abraham, Lot, Sarah, and Lot left, back in Genesis 12. This is a serious oath, and the great patriarch's family jewels, so to speak, the instrument of procreation, bears the sign of the covenant. Where did he place his hand? Put your hand under my thigh. It was in the private place where the family jewels were. You were making a covenant based on your continuing of your family, the continuance of your family. So that's kind of an interesting way to make a deal. You make a deal like that, you're making a sincere deal if you can let somebody grab you there, right? Mm-hmm. It's a lot of trust involved in that. So his country, when he says my country, go back to my country. Where's my country? Mesopotamia. The servant asked him, what if the woman is unwilling to come back with me to this land? Shall I then take your son back to the country you came from? In other words, if she's not willing to come back, you want me to come and get Isaac and take him? Make sure that you do not take my son back there, Abraham said. The Lord, the God of heaven, who brought me out of my father's household and my native land, and who spoke to me and promised me an oath, saying, to your offspring I will give this land, he will send his angel before you so that you can get a wife for my son from there. So he doesn't want Isaac going back there and then staying back there. He wants him to be out here, the wife to come to him. If the woman is unwilling to come back with you, then you will be released from this oath of mine. Only do not take my son back there. So the servant put his hand under the thigh of his master Abraham and swore an oath to him concerning this matter. So Eliezer heads north to Haran. He's got 10 camels and they're on their way. They're going to go from where he's at in the Ur of the Chaldees, and then Beersheba is where he's at. Ur of the Chaldees is where they came from. They went up to Haran. They're coming from Beersheba now to Haran to find people in his family. 660 miles. Then the servant left, taking with him 10 of his master's camels loaded with all kinds of good things from his master. He set out for Aram Naharaim and made his way to the town of Nahor. He had the camels kneel down near the well outside the town. It was toward evening, the time the women go out to draw water. It was common for the women to go in the evening and get the water for the next day. It was a time of socializing. Children would play in the evening. Do we have a story of someone who was not going to get the water in the evening? Who was that?
The woman at the well.
The woman at the well went in the morning. Why was she going in the morning?
She didn't want to be there with the other women.
Yeah, she was kind of outcast, right? So verse 12, then he prayed. Okay, here's Nahor, ready? Lord God of my master Abraham, make me successful today and show kindness to my master Abraham. See, I am standing beside this spring, and the daughters of the townspeople are coming out to draw water. May it be that when I say to a young woman, please let down your jar that I may have a drink, and she says, drink, and I'll water your camels too. Let her be the one you have chosen for your servant Isaac. By this I will know that you have shown kindness to my master. What kind of person is going to say, let me water your camels too?
Somebody that was kind-hearted.
She might be looking for a husband, maybe. I don't know.
Well, if you're going to get along with someone, you might let them have a drink, the guy, right? But to water your camels, that seems like an awful
an
big
animal
stretch.
lover.
And he thought, what he thought is, this will show this is from God, because nobody would do that. No one's going to do that. So that'll be my way of knowing that it's a person that God has chosen.
And I had to think about how much water a camel will drink at a particular time and how many camels that he had.
10 camels. We're going to do that in the next slide.
Tim, that's probably about a gallon of water.
Yeah, it is. It is.
A lot of water.
So after Abraham's brother Nahor, Aram Haram is an alternative place name for Haran. It is near evening, the time when women go to draw water. Eliezer has his 10 camels loaded with gifts. Eliezer will seek hospitality in Haran, and as we learned earlier, Zivia, that custom of hospitality, obligates the guest to bring gifts. So he has his gifts on his camels for the host. So only a gracious, hospitable woman is going to address this issue. So a camel lives 40 to 50 years. A full-grown adult camel stands 6 feet tall at the shoulder and 7 feet tall at the hump. Anybody been close to a camel? You have?
I rode one.
Oh yeah? Tell us about it.
Well, they were all on the ground, but when they stood up, that was something to hang on. But those are tall animals, and standing next to them, I mean, that hump is up, that much further up above my house.
Does you feel like it's like you're gonna fall off of it, or does it feel real secure?
You get that motion because when they get up, they raise their hind end up first, so that puts you going down, and there's a bar there that you have to hold on to so that you don't go over the camel's head.
So have you ever, when I was a young mother, I would use those wraps that you put the baby on your back with? And I always thought when I was doing stuff, I get down the ground, get up, I always felt like I probably looked like a camel. The baby's like swagging everywhere. I have a wrap to my back, right? That kind of feeling. So camels can run 40 miles per hour in short bursts and 25 miles per hour over long distances. An adult camel can drink, you ready? 50 gallons of water in 3 minutes.
Oh, wow.
Crazy, huh? So before he had finished praying, Rebekah came out with her jar on her shoulders. She was the daughter of Bethuel, son of Milcah, who was the wife of Abraham's brother Nahor, a close relative, right? The woman was very beautiful, a virgin. No man had ever slept with her. She went down to the spring, filled her jar, and came up again. The servant hurried to meet her and said, "Please give me a little water from your jar." "Drink, my lord," she said, and quickly lowered the jar to her hands and gave him a drink. After she had given him a drink, she said, "I'll draw water for your camels too, until they have had enough to drink." So she quickly emptied her jar into the trough, ran back to the well to draw more water, and drew enough for all of his camels. That is a lot of work. What's his name? The servant kid guy? What's he saying? What do you think he's thinking? Jackpot! That's exactly what I asked God, that she would be willing to water my camels, right? Who would think that someone would do this? He's watching her do the work of watering the camels. Without saying a word, the man watched her closely to learn whether or not the Lord had made his journey successful. When the camels had finished drinking, the man took out a gold nose ring. Ooh, just what I love, a new gold nose ring. Weighing a beka, and 2 gold bracelets weighing 10 shekels. Then he asked, "Whose daughter are you? Please tell me. Is there room in your father's house for us to spend the night?" So he's requesting that zina, that hospitality. He's requesting that. She answered him, "I am the daughter of Bethuel, the son of Milcah, born to Nahor." And she added, "We have plenty of straw and fodder, as well as room for you to spend the night." Then the man bowed down and worshiped the Lord, saying, "Praise be to the Lord, the God of my master Abraham, who has not abandoned his kindness and faithfulness to my master. As for me, the Lord has led me on the journey to the house of my master's relatives." The young woman ran and told her mother's household about these things. We were introduced to Rebekah in the short genealogy that was at the end of the binding of Isaac's story. Her name, remember we picked up that her name was in that? So that story of the binding foreshadows this event. So sometime afterward, the news came to Abraham that Milcah too has borne sons to your brother Nahor. So this is, Rebekah is absolutely related to the family, a close relative. Now Rebekah had a brother named Laban, and he hurried out to the man at the spring as soon as he had seen the nose ring and the bracelets on his sister's arms, and heard Rebekah tell what the man said to her. He went out to the man and found him standing by the camels near the spring. "Come, you who are blessed by the Lord," he said. "Why are you standing out there? I have prepared the house and place for the camels." So the man went to the house, and the camels were unloaded. Straw and fodder were brought for the camels, and water for him and his men to wash their feet. Then food was set before them, but he said, I will not eat until I have told you what I have to say. Then tell us, Laban said. Okay, so they're providing that zina, that hospitality. So he said, I am Abraham's servant. The Lord has blessed my master abundantly. Now why does he want to tell him, and why does he say, I will not eat until I've told you what I have to say?
He wants to be upfront with them.
Yes, and he
Why
does
he's
want to
come.
get bound into these people that aren't willing to do this thing, give away all that he has to give, because he'll look for the next one. He's confirming this is the right place to be before he starts unloading those camels with all the different gifts. Smart, huh? So he said, I am Abraham's servant. The Lord has blessed my master abundantly, and he has become wealthy. He has given him sheep and cattle, silver and gold, male and female servants, and camels and donkeys. My master's wife, Sarah, has borne him a son in her old age, and he has given him everything he owns. And my master made me swear an oath and said, you must not get a wife for my son from the daughters of the Canaanites in whose land I live, but go to my father's family and to my own clan and get a wife for my son. Why would he not want to get a wife from the Canaanites?
They were pagans.
The women were the ones who took care of religion. They're the ones who kept the idols. They're the ones who taught the children to worship those idols. That was where that came from. And it's still a part of the culture here. So he's making sure to go back to the family so that he gets someone who's a God-fearer, someone who worships God, not these different idols. Verse 39, then I asked my master, what if the woman will not come back with me? Verse 40, he replied, the Lord before whom I have walked faithfully will send his angel with you and make your journey a success so that you can get a wife for my son from my own clan and from my father's family. You will be released from my oath if when you go to my clan, they refuse to give her to you. Then you will be released from my oath. See, he doesn't want to give all that stuff if they're not willing to go with this. When I came to the spring today, I said, Lord God of my master Abraham, if you will please grant success to the journey in which I have come, see, I am standing beside this spring. If a young woman comes out to draw water and I say to her, please let me drink a little water from your jar, and if she says to me, drink, and I'll draw water from your camels too, let her be the one the Lord has chosen for my master's son. Before I finished praying in my heart, Rebekah came out with her jar on her shoulder. She went down to the spring and drew water, and I said to her, please give me a drink. She quickly lowered her jar from her shoulder and said, drink, and I'll water your camels too. So I drank, and she watered the camels also. I asked her, whose daughter are you? She said, the daughter of Bethuel, son of Nahor, whom Milcah bore to him. Then I put the ring in her nose and the bracelets on her arms, and I bowed down and worshipped the Lord. I praised the Lord, the God of my master Abraham, who had led me on the right road to get the granddaughter of my master's brother for his son. Now if you will show kindness and faithfulness to my master, tell me, and if not, tell me, so I may know which way to turn. Laban and Bethuel answered, this is from the Lord. We can say nothing to you one way or the other. Here is Rebekah. Take her and go, and let her become the wife of your master's son, as the Lord has directed. When Abraham's servant heard what they said, he bowed down to the ground before the Lord. Then the servant brought out gold and silver, jewelry, and articles of clothing and gave them to Rebekah. He also gave costly gifts to her brother and to her mother. Then he and the men who were with him ate and drank and spent the night there. When they got up the next morning, he said, send me on my way to my master. How far do they have to go? A long journey, 600 miles.
600 miles.
Long ways. But her brother and her mother replied, let the young woman remain with us 10 days or so. Then you may go. But he said to them, do not detain me. Now that the Lord has granted success to my journey, send me on my way so I may go to my master. Then they said, let's call the young woman and ask her about it. So they called Rebekah and asked her, will you go with this man? I will go, she said. So they sent their sister Rebekah on her way, along with her nurse and Abraham's servant and his men. And they blessed Rebekah and said to her, our sister, may you increase to thousands upon thousands. May your offspring possess the cities of their enemies. Then Rebekah and her attendants got ready and mounted the camels and went back with the man. So the servant took Rebekah and left. So before we go to the last part, 660 miles south to the Negev would take about a month. She probably asked Eliezer all kinds of questions about Isaac. Remember, Isaac is not living with his father in Beersheba. This was very unusual for the son to leave home before getting married and having his own family, but he is kind of older. When Rebekah comes to Isaac, he is living 3 years apart from his family in the desert in the tent of his dead mother. Some scholars think the whole binding thing might have created a wedge between the father and son. The whole sacrifice on the altar thing.
Yeah.
I think I'll move over here, live in my mother's tent. Verse 62. Now Isaac had come from Beer-lahai-roi, where he was living in the Negev. He went out to the field one evening to meditate, and as he looked up, he saw camels approaching. Rebekah also looked up and saw Isaac. She got down from her camel and asked the servant, "Who is that man in the field coming to meet us?" "He is my master," the servant answered. She took her veil and covered herself. So she covered herself to indicate she was unmarried. By covering herself with a veil, that means she's an unmarried woman. Verse 66, then the servant told Isaac all he had done. That big long story we've read twice. Isaac brought her into the tent of his mother Sarah, and he married Rebekah. So she became his wife, and he loved her, and Isaac was comforted after his mother's death. Where's the party? Where's the ceremony? Where's all the people?
Heck if I know.
What kind of person is Isaac?
I'm a loner.
We don't hear anything about him saying anything or doing anything between being, circumcised at 3 years old or whatever, weaned at 3 years old, and then later, now he's been living 3 years separated from his father after several years after the binding incident. He seems to be a quiet person, living on his own in his mother's tent out in the Negev.
And he was very sad over his mother's death.
Mama's boy.
Just playing PlayStation.
Yeah, I was gonna say that.
Playing PlayStation. Yeah, but he had no problem with taking a wife and loving her. He loved his wife. Isaac was comforted after his mother's death. Those are the last words we have. Interesting, huh? Do you think you would have been affected by the whole binding episode?
Be pretty traumatic.
I wondered if it was gonna happen again.
Yeah, what kind of crazy ideas is my dad gonna get next, right? I think I'll just move over here, get a little distance between.
Mom will take care of me.
Yeah. Well, his mom wasn't there.
His mom
She was
passed
in-
away.
His mom had passed away, so he was living in her tent, so he probably was mourning the loss of his mother. Seemed to be close to her.
Yeah, but wasn't she alive during the event?
We think so. We don't know what kind of condition she was in, because she was pretty old.
Yeah.
Yeah.
About that time, coming down from the mountain, I'd be thinking I'm heading somewhere else.